Resistance to slavery had a long history. It is now estimated that during 1 in 10 of all Atlantic crossings, the so-called Middle Passage, there was some kind of rebellion, Africans continuing on board the resistance that had failed ashore. In the Caribbean, and in many slave societies in the Americas, one of the most important aspects of resistance to slavery was the retention of African culture, or melding of African, American, and European cultural forms to create new ones. The importance of African cultural development of scientific knowledge, sophisticated beliefs, and most especially spiritual philosophy, including a creativity of encoding expressed through complex and sophisticated community rituals, using music and dance, provided the psychological and spiritual support that would help captives resist the dehumanization of enslavement, survive, and today to thrive. The slave trade was the ultimate illness to African community life, breaking hundreds of years of connection to ancestry and mostly peaceful and sophisticated connections to spiritual discipline that created the foundation of community life that would be needed to survive the next 400 years of slavery and varied forms of dehumanization. Jacob Olupona, Nigerian professor of African religions at Harvard, wrote, "For starters, the word religion is problematic for many Africans because it suggests that religion is separate from the other aspects of one's culture or society. African spirituality simply acknowledges that beliefs and practices inform every facet of human life. African spirituality is truly holistic. For example, sickness in the indigenous African worldview is not only an imbalance of the body, but also an imbalance in one's community, which can be linked to a breakdown in kinship and family relations, even to one's relationship with one's ancestors." Let's focus on one example of this cultural resilience in Brazil. The slave trade to Brazil from mid-1500s to late trafficking of the mid-1800s brought 3 million Africans to Brazil. It is in this context that capoeira comes to exist in Brazil. Enslaved Africans from diverse West African cultures arrived on the land now known as Brazil, carrying with them the music, religion, and dance combat rituals of their homelands.
Today, the largest concentration of black people outside Africa is to be found in Brazil, where there are some 60 million people of African descent and a population of 123 million, second only to the United States. Enslaved Africans produced the wealth that made Brazil an economic and political power in the years to come. And, at the same time, they left their proud and indelible stamp on the culture of Brazil. This African influence is still very much alive today.
When black people came from Africa to Brazil as a slave, was brought from Africa to Brazil as a slave, and there they were forced to work, and they had to develop from, like by what the history say, they knew this dance called zebra dance, and from the zebra dance they had to turn into capoeira, convert into capoeira, so they would have their freedom. And the capoeira was really an art. It's an art that was born from necessity.
Characterized by phenomenal agility and lightning speed. With capoeira, the hands and feet of African slaves and rebels were transformed into weapons capable of matching the knife and other weapons. Legends grew up around the ferocious leg fighting of the slaves, and its practice as a fighting form was banned on the plantations. But capoeira persisted and was used by slaves to escape and ward off their pursuers. It was born out of the memories of song and dance that the African carried with him on the slave ships to Brazil. Since no overseer or slave master would allow this form of fighting to be practiced, they had to invent ways to conceal their training.
And that's what capoeira was really came from, necessity. They had to develop this form of fighting so they would free themselves. And the idea of the dancing there is to camouflage, because sometimes when they were practicing, they would turn into a dance. So the boss, the captain, would say, oh, they just dance, they just playing, but they weren't playing. They're really practicing capoeira. So later on, they could escape or take the weapon from the boss.
And there would be somebody with this instrument, which is a main instrument in capoeira, the capoeira beating bow, all right, in type of trees. And there'd be like, fight without an instrument. But then when the police would come, which during this time they would walking around with in a horse, right? We call cavalaria. So a guy that would be like spying. So they would let the people know when the police would come with the beating bow, change the rhythm.
Ia pro rio, jogar farinha, ver os peixes, brincar um com outros. Desviar. Olhar os passarinhos, como é que passarinho andava com os passarinhos voavam, um batia no outro. Não sabia o que era. Eu nunca vi o que dizer. Capoeira é um mato. Sabia que era isso mesmo. Eu brincava de noite com os meninos, mortal, tudo fazia. Eu fazia capoeira aqui, fazia tudo lá quando ia no interior da roça. Você sabia o que estava fazendo. Depois que eu vim para a Bahia e conheci a capoeira, eu vim saber o que era os movimentos. Que é tudo capoeira.
In the formation of Brazil, one of the most important aspects happened to be African spirituality, African religious traditions that came with Africans. And there's this kind of deficit model where people talk about, oh, the poor Africans, they came enslaved, they didn't have couldn't bring their material goods, but they brought the most important thing they could bring. They brought their religious traditions, their philosophical traditions, their culture, because that wasn't contained in their minds.
A ancestralidade da capoeira, ela começa na África com luta já pela liberdade do povo negro na África contra o colonizador.
Capoeira is an oral tradition passed from master to student and across generations. Here is a clip from a short documentary from 1995 with many masters influential to capoeira today, including Mestre João Grande, Mestre Moraes, and Mestre Cobra Mansa.
Capoeira for me is body and mind put together. If you use just your mind, you are just a thinker. If you just use your body, you are an athlete. We have the idea that Capoeira Angola is made in a rodo. And the rodo, the circle, is the small world. When you leave the circle, the rodo, when you play Capoeira, you're going to live the bigger world, your life. And everything who happens in the small world happens outside in your life.
For me, to be a good capoeira master, you have to know everything. The fundamentals of capoeira. You need to know how to teach, play music, sing, respect your students, and receive respect from your students.
In addition to being a form of physical fortification and resistance to oppression of the body, capoeira, along with samba, or the sadness that sways, as described in Samba de Benção by Vinícius de Moraes, and candomblé, which is Yoruba religion syncretized with Roman Catholicism, allowed the Africans to express their identity and culture, joy and pain, in ways that eluded and subverted their captors' detection and oppression. We see parallels of this across the African diaspora in the Americas, from work songs to underground railroad communications, to use of Christian and European beliefs and language to imply one meaning but communicate something altogether different. The resistance of African communities led to innumerable art and creative innovations that have modulated over decades to today's reggae, blues, gospel music in multiple forms, voodoo to Baptist, cumbias, son latino, all the way to today's hip-hop, now performed in most African and African American communities, but to be clear, all as an extension of their ancient and pre-existing values.
From the color of skin, just come together to play capoeira and enjoy yourself.
Meeting new people, seeing new faces.
A new understanding, a new perspective.
Use your body in ways you never thought you could use it.
Once you try it, you'll be hooked.
It's freestyle, and it's just that with your body.
Capoeira to me is a form of dance, but also a certain way to get to know your body.
We do lots of stuff. Like, we do stuff that people wouldn't imagine. Like, we do like stuff like the ninja, you know, it's pretty fun.
My favorite instrument is the Betty Bow, and it's this long wooden stick with this string, and it sounds almost like a violin, almost bing, bing, bing. So I like it because I like music.
The Capoeira Angola is important to teach to youth because bring the idea of community very strong. We cannot do Capoeira by ourselves. First thing, they need trust in themselves, they need love themselves. If they work in a community, because everybody needs everybody else.
The Capoeira program is a lot more than just Capoeira. It's a new way of thinking, and it's really food for the mind. What I really love about it is that we have a food curriculum on Thursdays. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, we dance and we learn these moves and we learn how to play instruments. And then on Thursdays, we learn how to cook and how to eat healthy and about food justice.
You learn something new every day.
The things that I've learned from this program is that you have to be very patient with yourself and others.
What I would say is it's like a river. If a rock goes in a river, which could be anger, the river flows around the rock instead of, just probably pushing it over.
Because this program is not about capoeira. There is places, safe places that they can come and express themselves in different ways.
Without even telling you that this is what they're doing, like they just expand your mind.
We have a lot of roundtable discussions about violence and where basically it begins at and how we can stop it.
Before this program, I didn't, I was like, I don't care what that person feels like if I'm yelling at them, but now, since I'm in it, I think about people's reactions.
The things that we talk about when we're having our group discussions actually help me divert a lot of the anger into the dance that we do.
My bigger picture, each of these kids, start to trust more in themselves and their capacities to move forward in their life.
The best thing that I've got out of this program
is being a better person in the community.
And thinking more about the community rather than just about myself.
It's needed now more than ever.
The roda, or wheel, within which the game of capoeira is played, can be seen as a microcosm of the great wheel, the earth, where we learn to win over our play adversary, so that we can one day defeat our real adversaries, be they slavery, oppression, exploitation, alienation, or a number of other things. Today, people from all walks of life are drawn to capoeira for its beauty, and learn values of community and ancestrality, both their own and those of others. Not only is capoeira a genius system born out of resistance to slavery, it is embodied counter-programming to the devaluation of people and cultures of African descent in the Americas. Capoeira requires adaptability to challenging adversarial situations and an equal part cooperation to maintain the musical and physical integrity of the ritual.